My name, as you've been told, is Uni and Zioka. There's something I always like to clarify. I am 100% female. And yes, I like to say that because my voice tends towards the male side of it. I'm sure you agree. Now, my voice in itself, when you add a microphone onto it, it gets even, is it worse or better? Whichever way you look at it, yeah? It gets more amplified. And in this era of transgender and I don't know, all those debates, I have been to trainings where I speak and half an hour into my speaking, people are still looking rather lost. And sometimes I'd wonder, what is it? Am I not communicating? Then I realize that some people are still lost trying to connect what they are seeing and what they are hearing, and they are lost in between. And so in the process, I lose a lot of time. So I have learned that it's good to make that clarification so that then we can be able to move together. I'm an accountant by profession. Most of my working life has been in the banking and the SACCO sectors. And because of SACCO and what I've been able to achieve through cooperatives, my passion now is to empower cooperative leaders and cooperative members. So I do a lot of training across the country and even outside the country, especially to SACCO. So I am very delighted this afternoon to come here. I'm even more delighted to come and find a former colleague of mine as your CEO, something I only discovered last night, Jack Gudo. I was in Cooperative Bank for many years, and he managed my money and managed it very well. So I would say that you're in safe hands. So yesterday, as I was going through Unsacco, I couldn't remember who is the CEO of Unsacco. Because of being in the SACCO movement, I'm always checking who is where are my colleagues, where are my friends. And so I was saying, how come I don't know exactly who the CEO of Unsacco is? Then just to check, I find Jack Good, and I'm looking at the picture, thinking this name is familiar. Then today I actually come and meet him here. So it's quite a privilege for me to be here. Now, I want to talk about financial literacy. That's the bigger topic. Financial literacy is very big. So I chose myself a subtopic: get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I'll be talking about what that is in terms of financial literacy. I will go through my presentation, ask a few questions in between, probably. When we join SACCO, we come together, different individuals from different backgrounds, with different economic ideas, with different goals, different preferences, but we all come together to achieve our individual objectives and the common objectives of members through a SACCO. So even as I begin to talk about finance, I want you to ask yourself at the back of your mind, when you joined Unsacco, I don't know how you joined. I'll be telling you how I joined a SACCO. When you joined Unsacco, what was your idea? Why were you joining Unsacco? In terms of finance, in terms of money, what did you think Unsacco can give to you? And I say that because I have seen a lot of people go through SACCO from the time of employment to the time of probably retirement. And when you ask them, they kind of tell you that the SACCO did not help me to achieve what I wanted to achieve. But when I've talked to them more, I realized that it's not about the SACCO not helping them. The SACCO had the platform, but the member did not know what exactly do they want to achieve as an individual so that they can plug in to whatever platform the SACCO has. In that sense, we have savings and we have credit. There are people who come in to SACCOs because they want to borrow. You know, it's good to say the truth. SACCO means savings and credit. However, in Kenya, sometimes we have changed it to mean credit and savings, because some people, when you ask them, why are you joining a SACCO, or why did you join SACCO, they tell you, I heard that in SACCO we have very cheap loans. So I'm joining the SACCO so that I can borrow the cheap loans. So they only save because the SACCO will not allow you to borrow without saving. So they will only save because it's kind of mandatory and it has to be forced out of them. We have other people who look at the SACCO as an investment vehicle. So they want to put in their money, just put in their savings and wait for these huge returns. They might or might not really get what they are looking for, and that's what we'll be talking about as we move on, because savings is not wealth creation. For such people, I would say, put in your money and find ways to make this money keep growing. Don't just put in money and wait for dividends at the end of the year, because sometimes that can be disappointing. If you put money in a SACCO for a whole year and you don't borrow, you say, I expect 30%. Then the SACCO gives you, what percentage did you give last year? 6%? 8. And I'm sure if you ask some members, they tell you 8 is too little because of what the idea of SACCO is. So we'll be talking about that as we go, but just put it at the back of your mind that it is always very important for you to have your own personal and individual financial goals, and then plug into the SACCO as a vehicle to help you to achieve those goals. Now, what is financial literacy? Financial literacy simply means the ability to understand how money works and possess skills and knowledge to make useful decisions regarding money. Of course, some decisions we make about money along life might not be very good decisions. They might not look very useful. And that's what financial literacy is all about. So today I will not go into the other arm of financial literacy, discussing so much about how do you invest and where do you invest and how much returns can you get, all that. That is for another day. Today I want to talk about day-to-day life, day-to-day living, and just speak a little about this money that we are talking about. Now, one of the key components of financial literacy is financial attitude. Now, attitude is a big thing. I'm sure we've heard that everywhere. And everyone says you can have all this knowledge, you can have all this skill, you can have all your degrees, but even when it comes to the workplace, we say attitude is everything. So even when it comes to finances, financial attitude is everything before we even start talking about how we are going to achieve our goals. Now, what are financial attitudes? Financial attitudes refer to a person's beliefs and values related to personal finance. Now, attitudes will be as different as the number of people we have in this room. So when we talk about financial attitude, each and every one of us is likely to have very different set of attitudes when it comes to our personal finance. So, and this attitude is going to affect the decisions we make about money. It will affect how we behave when it comes to money. It will affect our habits when it comes to money. So the first place we need to start is to ask ourselves, what kind of attitude am I having? And I'll be giving you a moment to reflect on that. But let me just say, there are a few factors that could influence our financial attitudes. And number one is our background. Your background. Just where were you born? What kind of a family were you raised in? What did you see your parents do in regard to money? Did you see them keep everything, or did you see them spend everything? That affects you just as well as if you're taught to go to church, it would affect your religious attitudes. So when it comes to financial attitudes, background matters a lot. Now let me talk about why background can be a challenge. I have seen people in our generation saying that I want my children to live that life that I never lived. That, you know, in our family, we never were in a car. I never saw my father and mother drive a car. And so I want my children to be driven in a car. But now when it comes to defining that car, some of them go the other extreme and say, because I never got it, I want to give my children and my family the other extreme of it. So whereas you could simply buy a Toyota Corolla and your children and your family are still in a vehicle, you decide, no, because I never got it, you want to live the life your parents never lived. So you decide, I'm going to buy a Mercedes-Benz, or I don't know which other big cars you've come across, And that affects your finances. It affects your bottom line. It affects the little decisions you make about money. Whereas you could buy an 1500cc car, 1800cc car, you buy a 3000cc car, and that affects how much you're picking out of your pocket every day just to fuel. And sometimes what is fueling that? You say, I lived in abject poverty during my time. I don't want my children to go through that kind of life. So you want your children to fly. You don't want them to walk on the ground, you know, because I didn't live that life. I think it was so painful for me. I don't want my children to go through it. And that simple, something simple as that, is making some of us live lives that are stressing us. You have a salary, you have money, you have opportunities to get loans, but you live that life. Why? Because it is in your background. Sometimes it is subconscious. Sometimes it is subconscious. You don't know. So you pick loans to sustain that life that you feel your parents didn't manage to live. But now that you have an opportunity, you want to live it and live it to the fullest. You want to give it to your children, to give it to your family to the fullest. But at the end of the day, it affects the little decisions about money, and it affects where you are going to. Are we together? Secondly is social orientation. We are talking about just two factors that affect our financial attitude. When you talk about social orientation, where do you work? Now out there, the kind of mentality we have about people who work in the UN, do I need to say it? I'm sure you people know. You know what people think, don't you? Don't you? What do they think? Can someone tell me? What do your friends think about somebody who works in the UN? Yeah? Yes? Yes? Yes, I'm listening. You're loaded, dollars are written on your face. Thank you. Yes? What else? Anybody else? Somebody had a hand up there. They think you're rich. Yes? Anybody else? A third person? You interact with people every day. You interact with your family. You interact with your friends. What do they think about just the mere fact that you walk through the gates of the UN every day to come to work? What do they think? One more person. Yes? This is interactive, you know. One more person. Want to help me? Yes? That you don't have financial problems. You have all the money you want. And do you know what that can make you do? It can actually make you live that life to satisfy what we think. So you can live a life like you have no financial problems. And everyone who needs money comes to you and you simply fork it out. I don't say you don't help. It's good to help. But when I have the mentality that Omido works in the UN, so he has all the money he needs and even much more. Every time I have a problem, I will not look far. I will not even look to my own solutions. I will look for him to give me that money. So that is a social orientation. So sometimes where you work can affect your financial attitudes. And sometimes we have to be careful to make sure that we are not pushing ourselves into that kind of a life. Where you work also could mean that the colleagues around you, the way they behave when it comes to money, the cars they drive, the places they live, after all, you're all working in the same place. So there is a possibility that you will also want to fit in with your colleagues. So you will go and live in the places that they live. You will want to drive the cars that they drive. You will want all this. But as I've already said from the word go, we are also different. I believe that we work in here, but all of us in terms of finances are very different. Our earnings are very different. Our expenditure levels are very different. The needs that we have are very different. So that also is something we need to look at. Let's look also at our neighborhood. The neighborhoods that we live in can also affect our financial attitudes. You live in a place, People in that neighborhood behave in a certain way when it comes to money. They take their children to certain schools. So even the buses that come around your neighborhood are from certain schools. That is likely to push you very subconsciously to also take your children to those schools, for those of us who have children. And sometimes it is not fitting within what you have financially. So you are likely to struggle all your life, living in, can I say, quote unquote, the wrong neighborhood, taking your children, quote unquote, to the wrong schools, simply because that's what everyone around me is doing. Now, why I talk about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is that the moment you find yourself in such situations, what are you supposed to do? To walk away. Oh, now, Vice Chair is looking at me and is a bit surprised. If you're not there yet, walk away from those kind of situations. They are around you, but you have to make your personal decisions. Because when it comes to finances, the little things you do every day impact on the end result of your finances. So that's why I'm saying getting uncomfortable. Getting uncomfortable could simply mean that everyone is doing things in a certain way. But if you don't do it that way, it makes you uncomfortable. But for you to achieve your financial goals, if you have some, and we'll be talking about that, you need to get uncomfortable. You need to say, I won't do it that way because everyone is doing it. Some of us might even need to move from the neighborhoods where we live, because maybe that is what is giving us a headache. When we talk about money, we say, you know, you need to look at your pay slip. How much are you earning? How much extra money are you making? Then try to fit in that. We talk about that later. The churches we go to, some of us go to churches where there's a certain lifestyle, and so you feel uncomfortable walking to church because everyone is driving. So you push yourself to, Bona Treasurer, you push yourself to buy a car, and a specific kind of a car, because every Sunday, going to that church, some of us don't have cars, but every Sunday we make sure we arrive in a car. Either it's an Uber, or it's a taxi, or it's an hired car for the weekend. Some of us, I can see my friend is laughing, maybe it's the villages where we come from. You cannot just walk in like that. You need to arrive, and so it pushes us to arrive in a certain way. And all that, it might happen once a year, twice a year, but it has an effect on what's happening. So when we talk about being uncomfortable, it means comfort would demand that you just do what you feel like doing. But if you're going to achieve your financial goals, then it means you have to be uncomfortable. You have to feel funny about not going to certain places, and they say it's okay. Your friends say, I don't know what you people do on Friday afternoon at 2:30, because I'm told at 2:30 officially work ends and people go away. So I don't know. What do we do after that? Somebody to help me. What do we do when we leave this place at 2:30? Yes? Anybody wants to help me? Yes? Somebody there? Nobody wants to tell me what you do at 2:30. I hear, on Friday. That is on Friday at 2:30. Most people go to Naivasha. What is in Naivasha? What happens in Naivasha? And now, if you're going to Naivasha, I suspect you're arriving earlier than when all the other guys are going to arrive, because they leave work at 5 and arrive at 7. Now, if you leave at 2:30, you're arriving there at 4:30. So what are you going to do? Maybe to start preparing for them, And that preparation might mean money. Okay, what else do we do when we leave at 2:30 on Friday? That is getting a bit uncomfortable, yes? To ask, what do we do? Chair, what do you do on Friday at 2:30 when you leave the UN? You go to Kitengela, but you go with your wallet and your cards. Now, let me tell you, you know, that can also be a challenge. Do you know that? It can be a good challenge, but it can also be a negative challenge. Because Friday, you're free. I hear people say it's Members' Day. I don't know what that membership entails, but from the people I have seen who talk about Members' Day, That membership entails puncturing your wallets and wiping out your ATM and almost getting into your credit cards. Then when you come back on Monday, the cycle begins again, to some of those that I've seen. So you see, I'm talking about what influences our financial attitudes. And so that can drive you to have some specific attitudes. That every Friday, I need 10,000, I need 20,000, so that I can go to Naivasha and do whatever it is people do in Naivasha. I don't know. I don't know what it is people do. Nobody wants to tell me. I think it's getting a bit uncomfortable. Now, let me ask you a question. If your money, and I've put your money in quotes because some of the money we have is not ours. If your money was to talk to you, what would it say? Have you ever thought about that? If your money was to talk, what would it say? Just above there. And that's how we live our life every day. Just above, broke. Yet, we can do something about it. But when you ask, we are comfortable to give reasons and say, you know, everyone is there. Fuel prices have gone up. The economy is bad. I mean, everybody is the same, so what's the issue? But remember, when it comes to finances, it's such a personal issue that sometimes we have to be uncomfortable and not follow what everyone else is doing. Are we together? So let's talk a bit about financial planning, briefly. Financial planning, and this I will make it very simple. It's just about setting and deciding how to reach your financial goals. Unfortunately, many individuals I have interacted with do not have financial goals. They cannot tell you that 1 year from now, in terms of finances, this is where I want to be. Many people do not have financial goals. So I'll be challenging you this afternoon that by the time you leave here and set off for Naivasha, or will it be too late to go to Naivasha? It will be too late to go, or you'll still go, those who go. As you're driving to Naivasha and you put on that music, start thinking about your financial goals. Where are you now and where do you want to be in another 1 year? Because when you don't have any goal, when you don't have something to look to, then everything is okay. You will live your life just like that. You'll not work towards something. Now, when we talk about financial goals, one of the most important things to do, and I will ask us to pause at that moment and take a few minutes and do that reflection, is that we need to determine our current financial situation. So I'll be asking us for a moment to pause a little. This is a very individual, and think about yourself. What is your current financial situation? Whatever it is you want to put it in terms of, whether you want to say in terms of money, how much money you have in your bank account, what is your current situation? Now, because I'm an accountant, we like talking about balance sheets. That's an old term. We used to call them balance sheets. Now we call them statement of financial position. But allow me to still call it a balance sheet for our sake. When we talk about balance sheet, usually it's for organizations. But now I want us, who are seated in this room, very privileged, think about your own balance sheet. And what does balance sheet mean? First of all, because there's the word balance, it means it has to balance. Accountants in the house, a balance sheet must balance. That's the first thing. But the main thing in a balance sheet, when we talk to ourselves this afternoon, is two simple things. What do you owe and what do you own? That's your balance sheet. What do you owe and what do you own? Can you take a moment and just reflect, ask yourself, what do you owe and what do you own? Of course, the balance sheet has to balance. If we are doing a company balance sheet, you'll always find something we call assets. That is what you own. Then we'll find something called liabilities. And then we usually find something called equity. The balance sheet must balance. So take a moment and reflect. Reflect. What do you owe and what do you own? Ask yourself that question. Try and reflect from when you started working, from when you joined Unsacco, What do you owe? What do you own? What you own could also be the money you have put in Unsacco. That is your money, so you own it. It is yours. You might not have it in your pocket, but it's yours. What do you owe and what do you own? Which one is higher than the other? I see some people laughing. Some don't even want to think about it. Might make, I don't know why. Some people don't even want to think about it. And I'm not about to suggest that what you own should be more than what you owe. Not necessarily. Not at every point in life. Because there are times you can use what you owe to create what you will own. You can borrow money from the SACCO to buy property. And while you're still paying the loan, you might not want to say, I really own this, but in years to come, you will definitely complete that loan. And this property will be yours. You'll own it. So that's why I'm saying, think about it. What do you owe and what do you own? And when we talk about what we own, we don't want to talk about items like shoes and clothes and wives. You know, some people say that the more wives you have, the more you own. They are in that school of thought. Who is in that school of thought? I tell you, in the generation we are in now, the more wives you have, the more problems. If they are working, it's okay. Okay, we'll be talking about that. Let me stop there. Now we want to talk, when you talk about own, what do you have that can create income for you? We want now to shift to that direction. Because I said we have generally two categories of members in any SACCO. We have members who will borrow as long as space allows them. Isn't that true? As long as they have space. It is the SACCO that will tell them you can borrow no more. And Jack, I don't know if you have experienced that. I did when I was a CEO of a SACCO. Even when the SACCO says you cannot, the policy says it is no longer possible, they will still come knocking on the door and say, please, they used to tell me, please find space for me. Find space for me somewhere. Now I say, how do I find space for you? It is your pay slip, it is your earnings and what you've borrowed that creates space, and what you've saved and what you've deposited. No, find space for me. So we have that category of people who will always borrow. The issue is, what do you do with these borrowings? Friday is a good day to borrow. Because this money can all, by the time you get to Naivasha, ishapangiwa yote. Sorry for using that example. But if you realize, it is true, if you realize, in many SACCOs that have loans that are given instantly, in many financial institutions, go to Mshwari, a lot of loans are taken on Friday. Those instant. What happens on Friday? What happens with the weekend? What does the weekend demand of us? That is one side of members. And I said there is nothing wrong to have more loans than more deposits or savings. The only problem is we look at our life cycle. The problem is if that situation stays like that until the time when you're no longer generating more income, then it gives you a problem. But earlier on, there might be no problem, but the issue is when you borrow this money, what are you doing with it? Some people used to tell me, I work so hard. So when I take a loan, it's also my time. They say, kujiinua mgongo. It is my time, nijiinue mgongo kidogo. And I don't know how that happens, that you are so burdened like a donkey, but when you take this loan, now your back straightens up and you can start life again. The challenge is how much of that straightening goes to creating wealth or just to consumption. Then we have another set of members. And by the way, when you have these two categories of members, it helps your SACCO stay afloat. We have members who do not borrow. They only save. Thankfully, when there are such members in a SACCO, you find you might never have a challenge of going out to look for money from the banks. Why? We will use their savings to give those who are doing what? Who are borrowing. But when you ask yourself, when you save so much money, like 10, 20 million, in a SACCO or in an account somewhere, what happens? Is it creating wealth for you? What are you getting from this money? Is there a way that you can utilize this money better so that it multiplies faster? That's what we're talking about, financial literacy. So have you reflected already what you owe and what you own? Anybody has reflected? Okay, that one, people are very quiet. I think it would need one-on-one sessions. Now let's talk about our life cycle, because when you talk about the finances, we're talking about money, we are talking about attitudes, we're talking about making financial decisions. Truth be told, it also depends where you are at in life. So we have found that the normal life cycle of a human being also affects our financial decisions. So usually, from around 20 years old, we find people are now beginning to have some income, either through business, some are still in college, some are beginning to work in the 20s to 30s, and that is the best time to start thinking about creating and protecting wealth. I'll be showing you later that unfortunately, around 20 to 30, majority of the people that I have interacted with are nowhere near thinking about protecting wealth. Even when they get the money, they are not thinking about tomorrow. In fact, they say that tomorrow will take care of itself. How many of us were there one time? How many of us were in the 20 to 30s one time? How many of us had that thinking? You know? Yeah, I did too, because I got my first job in a bank when I was quite young. And you know, working in a bank at a young age, living in my mother's house, so I wasn't going to pay rent. So, I mean, what problem do I have to think about? Life will take care of itself. So for now, it's just to enjoy life, buy clothes, buy shoes. Now, there's a new trend. The first thing you do when you get a good job is buy what? A nice car. There's nothing wrong. It's okay. But we're talking about life cycle and how it impacts on our financial decisions. Unfortunately, the decisions we make in every stage of that cycle are going to affect where we end at. How many of us are in 20 to 30s? Maybe they are not here. They have already gone to see what they can do with what they have. Then, of course, that side, we go on there up to 35. We are building our careers at that stage, you know, and so life is getting better. You'll also find that as we approach that stage, we start settling down. I'm told that these days people don't settle down too early. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. At that age, you're starting to marry or get married. We're starting to have children. So focus is now shifting from me to my family. And I'm sure, Treasurer, that stage takes us a long time, because from the time you start getting your babies, or when you marry and start bringing up this family, it takes quite a long time till the time you can say that now the family can take care of itself. So at that stage, things change. A lot of our decisions on money we're thinking about family. Unfortunately, some of us, we still carried the habits and the attitudes that we had during our 20 to 30s. We carry them on into that season, and that becomes dangerous. Because now the financial burden is growing, but your behaviors are still the same. I'm not saying it is wrong to do what we do on Fridays. We're still doing that, but in terms of finances, we have less. But we are doing what we were doing then, and then we have more responsibilities. So what does that mean for us? It means that we are plugging a bigger hole. And as I say, that season takes us a long, long time. And then we continue into pre-retirement. And then soon, I don't know how soon it happens, before we know it, the sun is setting. Not setting meaning that we are departed, but setting meaning our generation of income is reducing. Now in our 20s to 30s, I've already said, life is usually hassle-free. and the future is supposed to take care of itself. In that stage of life, many times our priorities are to have a good life. Now, that good life, again, is going to be affected by our attitudes. Remember your attitudes? What does good life mean for that person? It depends on the attitudes we described. And nobody is thinking much about the future. Some of the people who make it very well in terms of finances are people who in their 20s to 30s have begun to appreciate what sound financial decision making means. And it's good that many of us probably are in the other years of life. So if you have young brothers and sisters, if you have children, start imparting to them good values. Because by the time they're in that stage of life, that is when some of what you taught them happens. And remember, you don't have to tell them, they watch you. And what you do is a very big lesson to them. Now, thereafter, of course, our needs are growing. And that's why I was saying, when we get into our 30s onwards, we need to slow down. Slow down on what? Slow down on any attitudes that we had that affected how we deal with money in our earlier years, especially if those were just about spending and enjoying life. Because when we don't slow down and we carry them on, then we get into a big challenge. Of course, as we move on, a lot of advancements, but one of the things that happens in our 40s to 50s, I don't want to ask how many of us are in that stage, is that, yes, can I ask? Okay, how many of us are in our 40s to 50s? Okay, thank you. There is a sudden awareness that finances are limited. It comes on us suddenly, like it never was there. But imagine from the time we are born, financial resources are always limited. But suddenly you realize there is so much to do and there is very little money to do it. And most of this so much to do, sometimes you realize is so important. But because of the attitudes we carried on from our earlier years, it becomes difficult to stop some of our financial habits so that we can now in this season thrive. And that's why I'm saying get comfortable being uncomfortable, because for you to stop some of the habits you had developed in the earlier years, if they were not sound, means again you have to become uncomfortable. But you're becoming uncomfortable knowing that the season you're in another few years, if you handle that discomfort well, you are now going to get comfortable when many people are becoming uncomfortable. Because a time is coming, if we are comfortable all this season, a time is coming when now discomforts will come in. And we will see that season. I don't know if any of us are in that place. So that's when people get panic attacks. People panic about money. And do you know what some people do when they panic? They decide, liwe liwalo. You know what liwe liwalo means? Yeah, there's so much to be done. Everything seems so important. I don't have enough money. It will never be enough. So, well, let it be. They feel like this thing is too big, I can't handle. So, let it be. I will live life one day at a time. When I need money, I will borrow. You know, and life will just continue. And that panic, I don't know if any of us have gone through that panic attack. I have. That's when people start trying side hustles, eh? Those who decide to do something, start trying side hustles. What is a side hustle? You want, now besides your formal employment, you want something that can give you money. Now the biggest challenge is, many people try side hustles, but it cannot work with your kind of employment. It is not compatible. You might get yourself fired, or worse still, both of those will collapse. Your job will collapse and your side hustle will collapse. So I tell people when I'm teaching business, think critically about your income generating activities. Think critically about that. At that stage, sometimes jobs become more threatening. I worked in the banking world, and in the banking world, we don't need to talk about it, retrenchments. And it's almost obvious that when you hit a certain age, you're not yet at retirement. When you've been this number of years in the institution, you almost know that the next retrenchment coming, my name will be on that list. And when your name is not there, you're like, fuchs. You know, now next time I cannot miss. And now some of us resort to prayer. We pray, oh God, please keep me for another 5 years. And when we go, we say, God didn't answer our prayers. Maybe he did. So that when you still have some energy, you can rework, you know. And I know this becomes a sensitive issue. Now, right now, we don't even need to wait for the 40s to 50s for jobs to be threatening. Because we are in a situation, and I think it's a global issue, that many people, many employers are not even employing us on the permanent and pensionables that used to be. So that you know you'll retire at 55, and when 45, 46 is knocking, you're saying, oh, maybe now. We are living in a time when a lot of employment is on contractual basis. So the truth is, the issues of jobs threatening happen much earlier. For some of us, the jobs are always threatening, always. So what do we do about it? How do we handle our finances differently so that should the eventuality come, life can still continue? At that point, sometimes careers, of course, are stagnating. Some people start rushing back to school, hoping that if I go back to school and add one more degree, I might become more relevant in the employment space. Isn't that true? You know, you look at me like I'm talking of some foreign... There's nothing wrong going back to school, but the reasons you go back to school. And yes, because sometimes you get to that place and you realize your financial needs are so big, you cannot leave job now, and the demands of the workplace is that you need this extra certification, so the little money you have or you don't have, you still work at going back to get that certification because it will give you a lease of life. The challenge is that, truthfully, and I'm talking from experience from my friends, so it might not be happening here, around that season again, we start battling diseases, lifestyle. Some of the financial decisions we made those years start biting now, and they bite in a very interesting way. They bite us in a way that they bring diseases upon us. Then we have to use the money we don't have to again take care of our health. You remember I talked about health and wealth and being uncomfortable? And so these two have to be intertwined, because if there's anything important, it is our well-being. And when your well-being is attacked in terms of physical, you will do anything to get it back. So unfortunately, sometimes it still happens in this very season. So I don't know, those of us who are in this season, how do you manage? When you are in this season, the demands are here, your money is not increasing. If you are a promotion, you are told you have hit the ceiling of promotions. From now, your salary will just be going up based on inflation. If not that, you know, the job is threatening. That time, the family has grown to a certain level. The demands are growing. Then, before you know it, a lifestyle illness hits you, and you're thinking back and saying, I know this thing came upon me because I never used to eat well, I never used to exercise well, now I have to do so many things, and all of that is demanding money. That is when people get stressed. That is how stress sets in, sometimes out of very little decisions. Some of us, we fear the day that we will have to relocate from the life that we are used to. If I'm used to living in that neighborhood, remember I talked about a neighborhood? If you're used to living in that neighborhood, and you get into this season and clearly now things are not working, and slowly by slowly you start realizing, I might now need to relocate from this neighborhood. To which neighborhood are you relocating to? Have you thought about it? Anybody has thought about to where would you be relocating to? Some of us find, okay, some are saying Ushago. Some of us don't even have those Ushagos. No, it's true and it's serious. Even if you wanted to relocate, you have nowhere to relocate. Because we chose to live comfortably in a certain season when we should have been uncomfortable preparing for that future. So a time comes, the comfort that we took now becomes the discomfort. And by that time, you can hardly change it. So at that stage, let me tell you the good news. Some people bounce back. And you know at that stage, you have had so much experience, so much wisdom, that 10 shillings in your hand can be like 1,000 bob in somebody else's hand. Do you know that? because of the wisdom. So if you take life and get wisdom, you bounce back. But some people, what happens? They wither. Haven't you seen them? You know, it's so quiet in here, chair. I don't know whether I'm touching on some very... You know, I've told you I was a banker, and so sometimes we sit around with my banker friends and talk about life, and sometimes I meet my former colleagues, sometimes I meet my former bosses, and we talk. And so when we talk, these are the things that come up. And they're like, oh, so I ask, what are you doing now? Where are you living now? And some of the discussions we've had with them are the ones that have pushed me to say, I better be uncomfortable now and think about tomorrow. Because if tomorrow will look like this, I don't think I want it to happen. But I hear it is so quiet. Maybe we will need some counseling sessions after this, you know, so that people go home, you know, we might go home and talking to no one, and people will wonder what happened today where you are. So, yes. Yes. Oh, it is sinking. I hope so. But you know, sometimes it can sink so low till you will not stand up from that chair. That's what I'm worried about. Let it sink, but please let's be able to get out. Now, that is the place of no U-turn. You can't turn back. You can't turn back the clock once you are in that place. But as I've said, you can bounce back. You can get up, and whatever little or much you have, you can change. But I say that change will require discomfort. Now, let me give you a good example, because I help people in terms of financial management. I help couples too. Huh? Yeah, I do. People are looking at me like, huh? Yes. Because sometimes our financial challenges are because of the compatibility of the two of us. So you find one person is on this side, another one is on that side. One is seeing this, the other one is seeing this. But we are all going to the same place, and so sometimes it becomes necessary that we help the couples together. Sometimes we help individuals. Because, I was going to give an example. I love going to Java, and I have observed a lot that when you go to Java, if you take a cup of coffee, how much does that cost? Around 200 shillings? That's the basic coffee. See your cappuccino, amanini. And usually you will not take coffee, plain coffee, true? Huh? You will take coffee with? No, let's talk. You know, and these things happen on Friday afternoon. I think from what I've had. Because a lot of time, a lot of freedom. When you go to Java, you will not take coffee only. You take coffee with what? With what? Carrot cake. How much is that? Minimum you will spend at Java is 500 shillings. There are some people who pass by Java every day. How much is that in a month? If you went to Java daily, spend 500 bucks. How much is that in a month? 15,000? How much is that in a year? Yes? 180? So how come when it is December and you want to take your family on holiday, and they say now it's time to go on holiday, and you say I have no money for holiday. Whatever holiday means to you, you say I have no money for. But every day you're going to Java, spending 500 shillings. It looks very little because you simply, now with the cards, you know, it's very good when you get money from your pocket, really. It is good when you get money from your pocket and pay. You know, when you see the money going, it sinks in your head. And there is a pain it gives you when you pull out 1,000 shilling note and you realize that change is only coins. But now we are living in an era where we don't need to see the money. And that compounds our problem, because all you need to do is click on your phone. So the pain we used to feel when you watch the notes going is no longer there. So you simply, on your phone, or you do what? You swipe your, so that you don't feel the pain. But can you imagine if you go to Java every day, just to take a cup of coffee and a carrot cake as you wait for your friends to finish work and come at 5 o'clock so that you can catch up. Do you know in a year you have spent 108,000 shillings? What if you had a goal? What if you told yourself at the beginning of the year, and forget about New Year resolutions, we're talking about goals. What if you told yourself that by the end of this year, saving needs to be done? We say that ideally, theoretically, if you could learn to save 20% of your earnings, that would be awesome. How many of us think we can save 20%? How many of us actually save 20%? We have made some of our wants into needs. And I go back to my first slides. It is because of our financial attitudes. Some of what really is not a need, it is a want. But because of our attitude, it has become a need. But if we clarified that, we would be in a better place. Eat at home. Oh my goodness. Sorry to all the restaurants and all the supermarkets that are cooking food. And I see people every day, people passing there, and I wonder, Allah, see, we can cook at home, ladies, and eat at home. Because sometimes, I also do sometimes buy food in the supermarket. Don't look at me like, hey, this life. No, I do. And so, I know that the cost of something I buy in the supermarket, the cooked food, and what I would cook at home, sometimes the cost can be 3 times. So it's okay once in a while. But can you imagine if that becomes your habit, that all the time you're not eating at home? So wherever you're eating, you can spend so much. And remember, food in itself is a basic need. Food is a basic. Where and what you eat can be a want. You get it? Food is a basic need. We must eat. But where you eat and what you eat, that one, it can be a want. So if we learned some of this simple, some of these are basic, you might turn around. You might turn around your financial situation even within a year. Avoid crisis. Crisis is what makes us sometimes do what we must do at that time. You're in a crisis, there is nothing you can do. Now, people who like keeping time like me, if I get myself disorganized, leaving point A to point B, because I must keep time, I'll end up taking a taxi, which maybe I wouldn't have. I would have walked, I would have taken a matatu. So do you see how crisis can impact on your finances? If you don't plan your money well, you get into a crisis, you have to take overdraft or take loans which you did not really need. Number 2, maintain equipment, including yourself. Do you know you're an equipment? So maintain yourself. Do the things you need to do to yourself and to your body. I tell people, love your body. Love your body. Pamper it. Because one time, it might start talking back and it might eat up all your money. I'm not saying that illness is always about you not taking care of yourself, but maintain your equipment. People, you have cars, you have machines in your home. Do you know that if you maintain them, you might spend less on repairs? But sometimes that is because of planning. Now, take the long-term view. Think more about the future than the present. But let me say this. You need to balance, and I'll be talking about that. You need to balance. We have, of course, people who, because of the financial attitudes I talked about, we are on the other extreme, where we will spend nothing unless it must be spent. And so sometimes we live a life of misery and stash our money away, and I'm sure we have seen examples. And when we are long gone, what happens to our money? So, whereas I'm saying take the long-term view, it's always good to balance between the short-term and the long-term. Borrow only what you can repay. Don't borrow more than what you can pay. Of course, we have many options of borrowing. Now, for those of us who have credit cards, if you analyze your credit cards well, you are likely to find that there is a period when you can use that credit card and not pay interest. Do you know that? How many of you have discovered that? You have discovered that? Yes. Yes. Look at your credit card. So do you know that your credit card, sometimes we'll say, don't take a credit card. I say, what is your strength or weakness? Now, for some people, they are too weak, so I tell them, forget about the credit card. If you can use your credit card to your advantage, you can spend money, you can borrow money which you're paying nothing on because you're spending it, but you make sure you pay it before that interest time rolls in. So you're actually spending free money. But many times, we don't remember to do that, or we don't know. And so we pay heavily on our credit card. So don't let your card exploit you. Exploit it instead. Create wealth. Don't just save. Yeah, I talked about some of us who are very good savers, and that is good because you have the money. But saving alone is not enough, because saving simply means you either put your money in your bank account. You can also save in your SACCO. That's very good. But sometimes you find that that future that you are looking for, even if you pulled out all your savings, it might not give you that future. So why don't you build that future now? And sometimes when I'm advising people, I look at the calculations and I tell them, why don't you borrow? I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes borrowing is wise. I tell them, why don't you borrow? Instead of just keeping your money here, why don't you borrow a multiplier of this money? Do what you want. You're already so disciplined, so you will pay it back, and within 3, 4, 5 years, you are going to have created more financial wealth than what you had just by having your money saved and getting a small return. So I've said it goes both ways. There are some of us who are very good and very good savers, but think more the long term, think about creating wealth. You can actually utilize your financial institutions like your SACCO to do what? To create wealth. Some of us, of course, because of our financial attitudes, we might have come from backgrounds where people borrowed, our parents borrowed, and that cost us heavily. And so we say, I will never borrow. But we need to deal with that so that now we live our life. Now, you need to live life. Live a little bit. How many of us have children? I came to learn that it is important that I give my children content for their school essays. You know, after every holiday, they go to school and they're told, write a composition about my holiday. How many of us have thought about giving our children content to write about my holiday? Don't get me wrong, I don't mean you can still go to Ushago and it becomes content. I'm not saying you must fly all over the place, but think about it. Those of you who have children who are still school going, go and give them an assignment. Don't tell them where it's coming from and where it's going. Tell them to write you about their last holiday. When you read that essay, you might see a lot about what you can do in there. And remember what I said, the more as we go into our later years, you find even opportunities for these holidays are diminishing because the financial resources, you now suddenly become aware they're limited. Remember we talked about that? And so even somebody telling you, let's go on holiday, is like they're trying to stab you in the back. But yet, there was a time maybe we could have done some of these things. But what I've also realized, some of it also is about planning. Do you know you can plan to go on a holiday and still go on a holiday without breaking the bank? So I thought this is very interesting. So please go, those of you who have children, tell them, write me an essay about my last holiday. Will it be 3 lines, then they don't know what else to say? Will it be 1 paragraph? And remember, holiday does not necessarily mean so much money. What I'm saying, live life. Enjoy this life. Every season, enjoy. Give yourself room to live it. Don't think so much money, 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 finance, finance, until you don't live life now. There is no other time. You live life as you go. You enjoy the seasons as you go. Then, of course, I've already said you need to have your goals. Adjust your habits to fit your goals. Now, very important, create passive income. Everybody is thinking of income. How can I make more income? Passive income is the kind of an income that you earn without you being actively involved. So think about creating passive income. Because you are employed, you might not have time to do a lot of other businesses. So what is it you can do without actively being involved, and yet it creates for you passive income? So think about that. Those of us who are heavy savers, this is a good thing to think about. You can invest in areas that are going to give you passive income, and you grow your wealth much more than holding your money. Even those of us who are not necessarily heavy savers, you can also think about this. You can borrow money to create wealth. So think about it. We'll talk about that maybe later. Now, one of my favorites is contentment. Without contentment, however much money passes through your hands, you might never be financially fit. So I tell people it's good to be content. Content with who you are, content with the stage of life you are in, content with where you work, content with just what you are able to do. And if you're content, then your financial attitude is going to be very different, because you don't have to live another person's life. The challenge we have, many of us, including myself, is that sometimes you try to live the life you want in future, you try to live it now. Get what I'm saying? The life that you're thinking about in future, you live it now. And that's why we are saying, forget about that life now. Create that life. As you're creating it, it's uncomfortable, but when the time comes, you will live that life and you will be happy. In conclusion, tell your money where to go. And make sure, tell your money where to go. Make sure it gets. There'll be discomfort along the way, but tell it. Making sure it gets there means jipige kidogo, drop a few things here and there. Make sure it gets there, because one day, all the discomfort you left along the way, you will now have it all to yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my presentation. Which seems quite short. But the moment you're signing a new contract, think about the ending of that contract. If it is January, think about what if in December my contract ends. Notwithstanding the fact that maybe I have been there for 10 years, and so the contract always gets renewed. It's always good to think about this. And when you think about this, what is going to make us do? Number one, endeavor to have 6 months worth of your needs. Save money worth 6 months of your needs somewhere that is accessible. You know, some of us put money away in places that it is not accessible. So when you need it, you can't get it. So of course, when you're investing and saving, always have some money somewhere. It should be 6 months. Of course, many people tell me this is an uphill task, but let me tell you, every time you start, you keep growing it. You keep growing it. And you're always better off than that person who never started. Now, talking about if your contract ended, what happens? We now go back to what life am I living? Because if I'm living in an area that requires me to pay so much rent, whereby if my contract ended, I cannot pay it, that can be a warning signal. So look at your lifestyle and ask yourself the same question and say, if, assuming my contract ended, what are the basics that I must have? Then, when you're saving, that's what now you're saving towards. But remember, even if you saved, it might be 6 months. Or the contract might end when you're just at the 3 months of the saving. So think about that. But that's why I said it's very important that the daily decisions we make of the life that we live should be a life that is sustainable. So that, I'm sure you had her question, if somebody is in, the later years, they lived a very comfortable life all along. Let me say this, whatever stage you're in, If you find yourself at a place that is not taking you towards where you want to go, you will need to have adjustments. Some of that becomes a bit personal, but let me give an example. Some people who probably find themselves in that situation, especially if they had very good income and they lived very good lives, you might find they have properties, they have big homes, some people living in big homes, and now probably they are just alone or there are two of them. Some of the advice we give them is now to become uncomfortable. This home could be a gold mine. Would you be willing to let go of this home and reorganize your life? Because sometimes you can give up this home, sell it, you get good money, and reorganize this same money. You live a more squeezed life. It might not be squeezed, but more squeezed life, but you're able to make it. So let me say that it would take personal decisions based on what you have. Remember, I said that you start from the place where you determine what is your current status. What do you owe and what do you own? So when we look at that now, we are able to say, what do you cut? But I can assure you, many of those people, you will find there is something they have, which if they are willing to let go, life can be reorganized. Sometimes also because of the number of years, letting go of some of these items, they have sentimental attachment. You get me, Treasurer? You have sentimental attachment to some of these items, which a financial advisor might be telling you, give up this. So of course that might need a lot of mindset, and then looking at what you have, letting it up so that you are able to redistribute and to reorganize. Now, as I think that is the last question, I believe. You're touching on an important area of investment, and maybe one day we'll come and just discuss investment. But let me say this. When it comes to investment, there are two things we look at. There's something we call risk appetite, and there's something we call risk tolerance. Appetite is the same way if I and my colleague Willis went to the dining to eat food. He might take in more than I. That is simply appetite. So when you talk about risk appetite, Mr. Nicholas, what you might take in might be more or less than what I might be willing to take in. Because when we talk about investment, remember we are saying, I am buying an asset. It could be a physical asset like land, it could be property, or it could be a financial asset like putting money in a financial institution. So investment means I'm buying an asset with the hope, and the big word there is hope, with the hope that it is going to give me a return, or it is going to increase in value, so that should I dispose it, I will get more than I put in. Now the reality with investments is that at the point of investment, you have this hope, but sometimes that hope does not turn into reality. The Chase Bank story is a bit unfortunate. It caught all of us a bit, even the bankers. So when it comes to, if you ask me a question, what is the best investment? I would want to know how much risk are you as a person willing to take on board? Secondly, how much can you tolerate? When you talk about risk tolerance, there is somebody, if they lost 10,000 shillings, their whole world would crumble. There is another person losing 10,000 shillings, is like, sinita tengeza ingine kesho. That is risk tolerance. So when you're looking at what is the best investment in that direction, you have to analyze yourself and say, what kind of a person am I? How long do I have to wait to get my returns? If we are in September and you want to go back, for example, and do a master's in January, and so you're putting aside some investment so that it can pay your education, you need to be alive to the fact that this investment can only be out there for 3 months. So whereas land can double, it might not double in 3 months. And even if it did, you might not get a buyer in 3 months. So when it comes to investment, we look at many factors. What is your need at that point? How long do you have to keep this money away? And how much money do you have? How much can you tolerate? There are some people who put money somewhere and they cannot sleep at night because every time they see that the values are going up and down, they almost get sick. Those kind of people, I tell them, stop putting your money there, because those might be high risk, high return ventures, but the money swings so much, it makes you uncomfortable. So some people will be very comfortable putting their money in a fixed deposit account to earn just 10%. But another person feels, me, I want 100%. So they will go to very risky ventures, which they can either get or not get. So that question really depends on an individual. All those factors, what are you looking for? How much time do you have? How much do you have yourself? What is your capacity to take a risk if things went wrong? So that's why we say some people are risk averse. They don't like taking big risks. With State House, I think I can help them to reorganize the finances of this country, and I'm serious. Now, I think that is the last question, I believe. You're touching on an important area of investment, and maybe one day we will come and just discuss investment. But let me say this. When it comes to investment, there are two things we look at. There's something we call risk appetite, and there's something we call risk tolerance. Appetite is the same way if I and my colleague Willis went to the dining to eat food. He might take in more than I. That is simply appetite. So when you talk about risk appetite, Mr. Nicholas, what you might take in might be more or less than what I might be willing to take in. Because when we talk about investment, remember we are saying, I am buying an asset. It could be a physical asset like land, it could be property, or it could be a financial asset like putting money in a financial institution. So investment means I'm buying an asset with the hope, and the big word there is hope, with the hope that it is going to give me a return, or it is going to increase in value, so that should I dispose it, I will get more than I put in. Now the reality with investments is that at the point of investment, you have this hope, but sometimes that hope does not turn into reality. The Chase Bank story is a bit unfortunate. It caught all of us a bit, even the bankers. So when it comes to, if you ask me a question, what is the best investment? I would want to know how much risk are you as a person willing to take on board? Secondly, how much can you tolerate? When you talk about risk tolerance, there is somebody, if they lost 10,000 shillings, their whole world would crumble. There is another person losing 10,000 shillings, is like, sinita tengeza ingine kesho. That is risk tolerance. So when you're looking at what is the best investment in that direction, you have to analyze yourself and say, what kind of a person am I? How long do I have to wait to get my returns? If we are in September and you want to go back, for example, and do a master's in January, and so you're putting aside some investment so that it can pay your education, you need to be alive to the fact that this investment can only be out there for 3 months. So whereas land can double, it might not double in 3 months. And even if it did, you might not get a buyer in 3 months. So when it comes to investment, we look at many factors. What is your need at that point? How long do you have to keep this money away? And how much money do you have? How much can you tolerate? There are some people who put money somewhere and they cannot sleep at night because every time they see that the values are going up and down, they almost get sick. Those kind of people, I tell them, stop putting your money there, because those might be high risk, high return ventures, but the money swings so much, it makes you uncomfortable. So some people will be very comfortable putting their money in a fixed deposit account to earn just 10%. But another person feels, me, I want 100%. So they will go to very risky ventures, which they can either get or not get. So that question really depends on an individual. All those factors, what are you looking for? How much time do you have? How much do you have yourself? What is your capacity to take a risk if things went wrong? So that's why we say some people are risk averse. They don't like taking big risks. And some people are risk takers. Where the risk is, that is where you will find them. So you have to assess yourself Again, don't go with your neighbor when everyone is saying, let's put money in Bitcoins. I have nothing against Bitcoins. Or let's put money in this place. You say, all of us, let's go. Another guy is sleeping comfortably because the 100,000 he put in, he has other millions somewhere. For you, you borrowed money from the SACCO to put in 100,000. So if it doesn't work, you lose the money, you have to pay interest on a SACCO. So you have to look at some of those things very independently. Ladies and gentlemen, I think there's a place where we have to close, and this is the place. I will give you my personal number. You can call me up. Of course, as consultants, if you call us, we come with an invoice, but all the same, we are now friends. We have a partnership. My number is 0722 811 628. 0722 811 628.
The people are now talking of a monthly income of 600,000 on the side, and by the end of this year, they would be talking about 1.2 million out of the working with them. So where there are other people also who followed Ashira, you remember the dissecting the pay slip, and again, we are getting good feedback from there. But we will be in discussion with Uni so that if our members go to see her in a period, a certain span, then she can give you discounted rates.
Just buy me coffee and Madam Uni has actually trained a board of directors. Last year, she took us through a financial reporting course, and I think the directors have really benefited from it. And that's why we decide that when we get such kind of expertise, we avail them to you so that they can also bring you up to speed in terms of what is actually happening. I also want to appreciate what Evelyn Olunja has said, and I think we should actually discuss and see whether we can be able to create a forum, a clinic, so that you can be able to be coming in and getting this kind of trainings. Because financial literacy is very important. Because some of these things that Madam Uni has been telling us, if we were to get to hear them earlier, I'm sure all of us will have taken different decisions, right? Even myself, personally, if I had had this last year or the other 5 years, I would have taken different decisions and I would be in a different position. So the sooner, the better. But we'll still continue engaging. We'll discuss within the board and see whether we can create a window where members can still be meeting Madam Uni in a structured engagement, and then you can be able to take them through your personalized situation. Like, for example, I was doing my own balance sheet as she was asking us to look at what we owe vis-a-vis what we own. And I realized that I'm just in the middle. What I owe and what I own can cancel themselves out. So it means that individually, if my contract is to end, I go back to ground zero. So I think that's a very important point, Madam Uni. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Unsacco Board of Directors, members of the Supervisory Committee, management, and our members who've attended the Education Day to really thank you for waking us up. And we look forward to a long partnership with you as we go ahead. Secondly, and I'm cognizant of the time, it's 4:30, but I know we're not going to Naivasha, neither am I going to Kitengela. But I only want to take maybe 10 minutes to also appraise you of some of the important developments that have happened, so that you're also in the picture in terms of how your SACCO is running and what you're looking forward to towards the end of the year. But before I do that, let me recognize my fellow directors and especially members of the Supervisory Committee, just those who had not been introduced earlier. I've seen the Chair Supervisory, Madam Ryle, if you could just stand and wave to the membership. Great, thanks. I also saw Madam Frida somewhere. Yes, member of the Supervisory Committee. Thank you. Which other director haven't I introduced? Yeah? The Honsek has been around, but I think he's stepped out. So thank you very much. So let me take a few minutes just to appraise you of where we are on the SACCO, and then we can be able to call it a day so that you can be able to get home a bit early. But by a show of hands, how many of you receive our member updates? Because we always send member updates to our membership. By a show of hands. Okay, maybe I should ask how many do not receive. How many do not receive our member update? Your hand, please. So thank you. I think you should, before you leave, ensure your email address is with the management so that you're added on the mailing list. And an important point I want to emphasize is don't put the UN email. Put your Gmail account, because even if you leave the UN, you will still be our member, right? But you may no longer have access to that UN email account. So put your Gmail account or your Yahoo account so that you can always constantly get updated in terms of what's happening. So before you leave here, I request you to ensure you give your email. But we're working with our management team to create a link on the website where everybody will be asked to go and ensure that you actually update it with your Gmail or your Yahoo mail account. Because you're losing a lot of members who, when they leave the UN, they no longer can be able to get access to information on the Unsacco, and that's really not a good thing. We want to ensure that as we go ahead, the board has a strategy to ensure everybody knows what's happening in the SACCO, so that when we come to the AGMs, we only go into transacting AGM business and not doing a lot of bringing you up to speed. But let me just summarize 3 things that I captured very well in the last member update. The first one is what Member Kipyego mentioned, Chase Bank. We are happy that there is a bit light at the end of the tunnel. We have had access to the initial amounts through the SBM takeover of Chase Bank. I think, CEO, can you confirm that we have actually received the 318 million? I want you to speak so that you can confirm the members here that we have actually received the 318 million.
We received 318 million. That is the first tranche. The rest will be paid the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause for that? Because we have been praying and working very hard and pushing the regulators to really, really recover this money. At least now we are certain that the other 318 million is invested at a rate around 7% or thereabouts, because it will be varying according to the variation in the KBR rate. But at least in 3 years, we'll be able to recover the other 318 million. And I think that's a major development for this institution. Members may not understand, but I stated it in the AGM. The reason we paid 8.7% deposit, which is the lowest that we have ever paid, is because we had 850 million, which we did not have access to. If we analyze our liquidity, around 3 billion, if someone removes close to 1 billion from that 3 billion that you have, and you cannot have access to it. For example, if I use a very rudimentary example, if you're cooking with the 3 stones in the village, then someone removes 1 stone. Obviously, your ugali will not be sweeter, right? In fact, you may take longer to cook the same ugali. You'll be struggling, you'll burn yourself. So we have been going through some turbulence as a result of the investment decisions we took. But recovering this 318 million and having a clear path to getting the other 318 million will bring us back to where Unsacco has always been operating, right? Where have we always been operating in terms of dividend? Where have we always been operating? Yes, exactly. At least a double digit, right? So we are looking forward to doing business and at least giving you that good return with the environment, climate that is now somehow improving. The other quick update I can be able to give, I think the Vice Chair mentioned the product review. We want to encourage you to come and re-engage with the office. We have tried to make our products more exciting so that we can be able to at least get loans. Madam Uni, we have also launched a mobile loan product.
Wow, okay.
And I want our members to be taking loans on Fridays or Saturdays. Yeah, I spoke to the chair of police and he told me that when they analyze their mobile loan product, on Fridays, it starts at 3 p.m. all the way to midnight. They move between 50 to 70 million shillings on the mobile loan product. So, although Madam Uni has been trying to discourage you out of it, we now have a mobile loan product out there. We want to be seeing a lot of you doing transactions, but also doing very conscious investments with the money you get. We have received some information in terms of teething challenges on the mobile loan product, but that's how we intended it. We launch it, then we resolve the teething problems within the 1 month so that we can be able to effectively now improve it when we go full throttle. The board expects that we should perhaps release the mobile loan product to a maximum of 100,000 shillings. We don't want to see a member coming to queue for 100,000 shillings in our SACCO. We should be able to get it at the touch of a button. I want also to inform you that this year, the Unsacco is the best managed SACCO nationally. You remember last year we informed you that we were number 2. This year we were very, very happy to realize that we actually were ranked as the best managed SACCO. We managed to beat Police SACCO. So in addition to that, we also were best in savings management. Our savings management culture is the best in the country. And I think we are still trying to work very hard to get back the confidence from the membership so that we can be able to take this institution to the next level. The third point I want just to emphasize is the importance of this member education. And I think we want you to go out there and be our ambassadors. Let's ensure that in future, when you're coming for member education, we come with our friend, our colleagues, so that we fill this hall. Because there's a lot of important information that is normally given in member education. Personally, I've never forgotten what Ashira taught us on how to look at your payslip. I've never forgotten what our mayor taught us last year in terms of how to do investments, and in fact, investments in houses and lands and the importance of getting into it. And now I'm going away with a very powerful message that I'm not going to be looking to be comfortable. I'll actually be seeking aggressively to be uncomfortable in the investment decisions I take. In fact, if I find I'm comfortable, I'll be asking myself, why am I comfortable? Is there a discomfortable position I should be in right now so that I can be, what Chair Alusa told us when we retire, I can now be fully comfortable. And the reality is I've seen even some of my relatives. Now they are around, they have these 5 years that they got in government. They have been added 5 years. It's called Bamba 5. Government, people are supposed to retire in 55, but because government could not handle the pensions, they allowed them to get another 5 years on their, so that they are still working. They are not working because they are very tired. At 60, really, obviously you cannot work as hard, but they cannot do many of the things they wanted to do. Some of them don't have homes in the village. And they have children in universities. So they are like asking themselves, do I construct right now or do I finish with my children in university? And Uni, what you say is very true. I've witnessed it and we are witnessing it. We are very privileged to have been here today. We have been given an opportunity to start planning so that we avoid or getting into it. And those of us who could be in this position, we identify opportunities of bouncing back. Personally, I live here with the fear that if something happens to me, I may have to move away from where I live. And I have lived in Kibera. I know Kibera very well, Lainisaba, Gatukira, Kawangware, Congo. I've lived there very well. I think for me, I can easily fit back where I came from. So I'm one of those people who would easily go back to Kibera, Lainisaba, and live there because I have a community there that I visit one time. I understand the challenges they go through, and I engage them as a person. I decided not to live and forget where I came from. Now, as a final message in terms of taking these comfortable decisions, let me give my members just a small snapshot of what I did, I think, over 7 years ago when I was a UNV. UNVs, in fact, were not paid salaries. We were paid what they call, what do we call? Volunteer Living Allowance, VLA. In fact, they don't want you to call it a salary. But the VLA sometimes is better than a government employee because it's like 73,000 shillings. That's what I was earning. But I was driving a car, a Toyota Premium, a KAY 645B. That was my first car, by the way. So at 73,000 shillings, volunteer living allowance, and a KAY 645B Toyota Premium. I was living the life. I was living the life. I was with Kipiego there. We were doing a lot of DSA trips. So I would always supplement my 73,000 shillings with the trips. So every time I was talking to my bosses, I want to travel. You know, we need to go monitoring the evaluation. So we need to go site visit. It's because my 73,000 shillings was not working. The car was chewing close to 16,000 shillings. That's the mechanic. He was always calling me, are you sure the car is fine? There must be something we can fix on that car. So it was a very, very painful decision, but I realized me and my KAY 645B had to part ways. By then, I sold it to a friend who bought it and paid in 3 installments. The other installment he paid, I think, 7 months later. But that was the best decision I ever took in my life. That was the best decision I ever took in my life. My friend didn't know he was taking away a burden from me, because it really helped me sit back, reevaluate my life. I lost so many friends. Some of the girlfriends I would drive around, all vanished. You know, they vanished. Because now we could not be having good discussions in the matatus. At least we're having very good discussions in the car. But my wife hung along. So she's the one who survived with me in the matatu industry. But that helped me because I managed to reduce the thing that was chewing a lot of my money, the 73,000 shillings. We managed to buy a small plot in Kitengela around that time. And from that discomforting decision, I've been able to see a lot of things develop. So I just want to encourage all of us to go back thinking about the discomfort that we need to embrace. Let's go think seriously about the discomforts we need to embrace and then make those changes. So without having to turn into a preacher, because I think for my retirement plan I'll become a preacher, let me close it by thanking all of you for having joined us today and wish all of you the very best as you go home. Please send the message around so that in future we also ensure to have a lot of members coming for these member education days.
This has been a very useful session for members. One, we are pleased because quite a number of members have turned up. I think members are really thirsty to hear about financial literacy. And the speaker that we brought today has really talked to them, and you've seen how members have engaged with the speaker today. So the issues of how to properly invest, how to save a portion of what you get as an income has really been an issue that has been discussed today. And I think the Unsacco will be looking forward to having similar sessions in the future so that we have our members engaged and also to get feedback from the members.
Thank you.
The talks that were given in today were very honest, and very life-changing in the terms of not very many people will tell you the truth about how it is out there. Not very many people would actually express the financial truths that people endure out there. And it's important that such forums on such platforms of truths, okay, of what people deal with every day that people don't talk about, okay, should be more addressed, okay. Hence, the advice and the wisdom that comes from the experts and also from the retirees, because there's a gentleman who was here, he gave out very sound advice, and he's a retiree. And I'm happy and I'm proud of him because of the information that he gave us was wise and true. And most people out there will not tell you the truth. And for that, I thank the Unsacco for it. And I hope that I'll be a member. And I pray to have a lifelong relationship with the SACCO.
What really struck me is I really need to start thinking about my future. Not that I've not been thinking about it, but I really have to be proactive. Because many times we procrastinate, I'll do this tomorrow, I'll do it another time, let me eat this money now, and in the future I'll save. So for me, it's really to sit down and look at my life critically. Where do I want to be? Am I going to be comfortable that time? What can I sacrifice now? I think I really have to do that, and we have to discuss as a family. My husband is also a member, and my son, so I think we are going to sit down and discuss that.
Education is key in cooperative industry. In the SACCO industry, the sensitization and education is important for us to be able to grow the business. The reason is we are here to grow members socioeconomically. If they do not know what to do with the money they take from us, then we are impoverishing them instead of growing them. So over the years, what we have thought about is to be able to help these people grow, our members grow. We organize financial literacy sessions so that we can have a group meeting and have serious, candid discussions about money matters. In the African setup, we do not normally have money talk, but when we come here, they tell us as it is. That way, we are able to develop them so that when they are young, you can take a consumer loan, but as you continue growing, you go into a development loan, and soon we want to see you in the next side of life.
What's that one thing that struck you out from this today's talk?
That we need to plan for retirement, but actually know what kind of life I would want to live in retirement. I do not need to wait until I retire for me to start doing what I thought I should do. As I put money aside for retirement, as I do investment for retirement, if I want to be a farmer, can I start doing that farming business when I'm still working, not to get money, but at least to get the experience? And the other thing they have told me, from the part of country I come from, we like good life. She has not told us not to enjoy life. She has told us live life a little, the money skills, so that we can give our children content for their composition. I found that eye-catching. We have learned that this growing our members is also going to grow our business, because through it they are learning how to make deposits, and through having those deposits we are able to give loans. That way we'll be able to achieve our main objectives, which is around financial performance. We can be able to give good returns to our members, and through such we are even able to get more members. As you're seeing staff outside, they were recruiting members, opening junior accounts. So we'll be growing our membership, growing our loan book, growing our asset base, and there Unsacco goes and goes. As we are today at 11.4 billion, we are going to move to greater heights, and we have learned from here that we need to tap the young. We tap the youth at that particular age. And you have heard me say today that I'm welcoming all parents to release their junior children to us, that is the youth and young adults, so that they can learn the money matters earlier on in life, not to make the mistakes that we made. This is a great thing, and they are missing it. Unsacco is organizing it free of charge. You have heard the facilitator saying that if you're seeing her after this, then you will have to get an invoice. So we encourage everybody who did not come today to make a point of coming the next time they hear there is one. Thank you. Thank you.
It is a day that we want to dedicate to our members so that we can actually encourage a savings culture that can actually promote discipline. Our membership requires a lot of financial literacy, me included as well. And we have seen situations where we have received loans from the SACCO, and we do not know exactly what to do with it. Today's topics actually showed us that if you can actually receive money, please try and save some amount or invest it and take it into a direction that it will actually create some wealth for you. That is a culture we need to actually try and promote. It means that we have to squeeze ourselves, be uncomfortable now, so that in future we may be actually much better. It is better to live an uncomfortable life when you're young, but when you're now heading to retirement like me, it becomes an issue. If I have to now relocate and start living at a level that maybe I was not comfortable with. Why don't you start small? Why don't you squeeze yourself now? Put money aside for your family. Put money aside for the needs that are very important for you. Build it from a younger age so that as you grow up, and we're all growing up even at this age, you will be able to have something that you can actually give to people who are coming up after you. Not that you're just going to give it to them free, but you need to educate them as well. that you have to have a bit of discipline because you'll require it in your family, you'll require it everywhere. Even as a nation, we require the same thing. We have quite a lot of products. We have about 12 different products that we encourage our membership to partake. However, many of them are risk averse. They say that maybe I don't want too much debt at the moment. However, debt is not punitive by itself if you know where you're going to take it. It can be punitive if you've taken it for consumer products, that I have taken it and I've gone to entertain myself, or I've gone to use it on extravagances. But if it is something that you're taking that is going to be productive for you, it is good to take it. We have the facilities for you, because we need to take you through a point that you may require finance now to create better wealth in the future. 5 years, a 5-year loan product from us, which is 60 months. If you invest it well, that 60 months can actually create the same amount of money that you actually borrowed from us. But also, as you borrow, repay. So because the money that you're borrowing is money that comes from other people. So we develop a culture that can actually have people who are responsible borrowers and people who will also get a return at the end of the year from the dividends and from the interest that you are getting from the same borrowing that you have taken. From today's talk, I would put it simply that it is better to be able to direct where your money goes and see that it actually reaches there. If you don't know where your money goes, you need to start thinking again. Hold on to the money first so that you can know where to take it, because money will actually come and pass your hands and disappear without you knowing it. Please take care of your money. Thank you.
The importance to our members is actually for them to help them manage their finances and also make important financial decisions, and also learn about our SACCO and how the SACCO can actually help them in decision making of their finances.